when we talk about quality of place, livability, how is that changed, and how is that becoming more important in our discussions about how to build great and thriving communities?
Well, I think the good news is it's now, first of all, talent is recognized as an economic issue, which was the first hurdle, right? Mm-hmm. And the second one, I think, is now there's a recognition that quality of place is essential to the attraction and retention of talent. So, and as a and it also underpins innovation in a lot of ways. I mean, this, the happy accidents, the collisions that you want to occur in your city. So I think that now that has become, that's less mainstream, I think, in the economic development discussion than talent around the country. Right. But it is beginning to enter the idea stream in terms of economic development.
And for folks in the audience, when we came to this, and it's just, everyone talked about, it was about companies. And that's important. Companies do drive the economy, but no one was talking about people. And I remember I asked I kind of started to ask students where they wanted to live and work, and they started to tell me, because I want to live in a great city. I want to live in a great city that has a thriving labor market, more than one job. And this idea, and economists have now proved it, that actually it's not just firms that generate innovation, it's this human capital quotient, that places have more of it. But Deputy Mayor Steele and I were talking a couple weeks ago, and we had a discussion around breakfast again today about this is all happening, but what's happening, unfortunately, in our cities is we're starting to have this divide, right? And we were talking about, in a knowledge economy, in a post-industrial economy, you and I were talking about that, Bob, how do we create these new pathways to get more people involved in this knowledge economy? And I kick it to you, but anyone else, I think our next strategy for economic development has to broaden it so that we can get more people participating and groups that are currently feel like they're not part of this knowledge economy more on board.
Yeah, let me just go back for 1 second and comment on something that you and Carol said, and then I'll speak to this. I think that when I began my career and thought about financial services, you chose whether you were going to live in New York, Chicago, maybe Boston or Los Angeles. And that was where you needed to be to have a rich experience with your career. That's not true. New York today competes with Boulder, Portland, Seattle, Austin. These are the places we compete with, and it's actually been good for cities because we had to raise our game. And whether it's arts, parks, quality of water, these kinds of things now, we have to have a game that competes with them because you can have a rich life living in these other places, and that's different than it was 40 or 50 years ago. And I think we've benefited from having that bar. I think, Richard, the question you asked before my diversion was, is I think really one of the knotty ones, and it goes to the issue of skills. And the reality is, as I said, our view is the mayor's promulgated, is that we're now in an information and knowledge economy. And it's not about education per se. That's the cornerstone, but it's how do we build the skills. And I think the other thing I've been trying to think about is that if you buy the idea that I think, if I remember back, it's the second derivative, it's the rate of change of the rate of change. And that's accelerating. So the idea that you were going to be trained and, like me, work at one place for 30 years, I think that's off. And instead, how are we going to continually get people the right skills to begin with and then make sure they continually are refreshed so they can have a rich experience and contribute in a special way? And that's the big challenge, I think.